I'm joined by psychotherapist Stephanie Regan, who's letting us in on the 5 things successful relationships have. We'll be talking about chemistry and respect, self-awareness, emotional maturity and proper communication, and the ability to grow both as individuals and as couple. I can already hear your pens clicking, so let's get to it. Stephanie, you're very welcome.
Lovely to be here, Jen.
It's lovely to have you. Let's get to it. Do you think we oversimplify love?
Yes, I think we do. I think we're inclined to oversimplify it. And I think in a way, even what we're doing here today, we're contributing a lot. All these people are feeding in content and everybody's eating it up. It's, sound bites are great, but they actually, there's an awful lot in love in who you choose, how you choose, what you're looking for, what you need, what you think you need, and then the whole lifespan that it has to last for. So I think all of that, means it's very, very complex.
I'm so glad you said that because we talk a lot about dating on the show as well. And I do find that there's people, young people especially, have these boundaries and these no-goes and these,
red flags,
green, all these kind of flags. And I'm looking, I'm going, it's a lot more. Sometimes, a red flag, some are very obvious. But there seems to be a lot less tolerance as well. And people don't really get a second chance. We're going to get into that.
Okay.
But you said chemistry matters, but it's not rare or magical. What do you mean by that?
Well, I suppose what I mean is, sexual attraction and chemistry. I mean, of course, I think there is a magic in that. There is a loveliness in that. But it's really important to separate it a little bit, isn't it? And to recognise that it's fairly physically driven, and of course there's a huge emotional component as well. But the unconscious, as we would talk about, is you see in somebody something that you want. And that's not always just sex. Behind that is also this draw to somebody who you feel is going to kind of complete you in some way. There's some lack in you that you kind of see they can answer. That's what's going on underneath, it's almost like a current. Mm-hmm. It's going on all the time and it's expressed in the attraction, in the I fancy you, And I often say to people, there's many people you can love, but you choose to stop somewhere. You have to think about that, why you stop with this person. And I find myself often encouraging people not to stop too early. It's a learning. Relationships are a learning. That's how, in fact, relationships, I think, are like a mirror. They're where you see yourself. And if you can, make sure in your 20s to go through, a number of relationships, you really learn more and more about yourself. But what I find now, people are a little bit desperate and they're kind of grabbing onto a relationship and they're staying with it instead of just exploring it. Then maybe it's not good, maybe you don't like him or it's not really working out. Let it go. Mm-hmm. Don't work on it. As a therapist, I know that's a funny thing to say.
Really? Don't work on it?
Don't be working on it at the beginning. Let it go.
Okay.
It shouldn't have problems in the beginning. Look back at your own relationship at the beginning. It should, it should soar a little bit.
Should be easy.
I'm sorry. Yes, it should be easy. The loving should be easy. The agreeing should be easy. The I hurt your feelings should be very seldom at the beginning.
Yeah.
And I hear people, they're torturing each other and they're arguing all the time and they're trying to fix it. Don't fix it.
It's so interesting you said that because it does ring true now. And a lot of people have said to me about a previous relationship, it shouldn't be this hard in the beginning. It shouldn't be. So there is an element of truth in that and it shouldn't be that hard.
I think there's much more than an element of truth. Because people go on with all the, the green flags, the red flags and whatever. But for me, the biggest red flag is trouble in the first year.
Okay.
Don't be going to counsellors with that. Don't be going to therapists. People come to me and I say, I wouldn't work with you. I wouldn't work with you. I don't think it's worthwhile. I don't think you should. And if you're having problems in the first year, can you imagine what you're going to have at year 30?
Oh my days. Doesn't bear thinking about. And that's just down to compatibility, right?
Yeah, I think so. There has to be, look, we know the draw is many things and on many levels.
Chemistry.
And the chemistry and the draw and all of that and the emotional thing. There has to be fun. I think there has to be liking. Never mind the love and the passion. I think you have to like people. Yeah. You got to like being in their company. You want to tell them the story. You have fun together. You like cooking together. You like going for walks together. It's got to be easy, easy, easy. Like your best friend, except you fancy them.
Okay. Welcome to Just Between Us with me, Jennifer Zamparelli, sponsored by Kildare Village. Oh, yeah. Now, this podcast is mostly about fun indoors, but if you fancy a bit of al fresco, why not get out of the house and take a visit to Kildare Village with over 100 boutiques, 60 of which are exclusive in Ireland and 20 new brands to choose from. Visit Kildare Village, shopping that's so Irish. And how important are respect and genuine interest in, sustaining attraction?
In
sustaining that attraction throughout the years, how important is that respect?
Yeah, I think respect for each other's kind of difference probably is what you're thinking of there, and what I'm kind of picking up on. It's not just respecting the person because, they have things or they are somebody. I think it's about respecting that they're not the same as you. That's a really important thing, I think, in relationships. They're different, they've different strengths, they come to the table with different stuff. Men and women are different. That really shows up in marriage, of course, and in long-term relationships. We can go into that a little bit more. But I think to sustain a relationship, you have to be yourself. You have to have something of your own and not just be, relying on this relationship too much. I think that's where things crumble. It's a bit like the structure isn't strong enough to hold this big relationship that has to last over a whole lifetime. It's kind of hard.
I love that you mentioned fun as well.
You got to have loads of fun. I mean, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. There's got to be crack and fun. And I think, not necessarily, we're not talking all excitement all the time, but a willingness to grow together, to go in new places, in new ways. I mean, you're marrying somebody or settling down or committing to somebody who's going to change anyway over time, and you're going to change. So how are you going to do this? You've got to be the kind of people who are trying to move together forward in life.
Is it true that great relationships are less about finding the one, so to speak, and more about having the skills to build on something?
Well, I think picking well is a great start. Let's be honest. You see couples who I think have been lucky. They've met somebody, they were mad about them, they really liked each other, fancied each other, were completely drawn to each other, but they also grew very well together. You often see that. You see the couples who, they were never into a particular sport, but now suddenly they're into it together. Maybe they were doing one thing, but they've changed their whole kind of lives, but they've done it together. I think that's kind of lucky. There's a bit of luck in that. But I do think picking well is a good thing, obviously, to start. But there are skills of relationships. And you will see it. If you see somebody ending or somebody dies, perhaps, in the sad situation of that person who has had the happiest love, you might think they'll be the worst off. They're often the people who create another great love. Why? They're not lucky twice. It's not just about luck. It's because they know how to love, they know how to forgive, they know how to repair, to make it up. They know how to love somebody, and I think they bring that with them. I know that's making it serious and not frivolous, but that's how it is. I mean, the capacity to love is deep in you.
I want to go back to something you mentioned because I know our listeners will be dying to know. Okay. You talked about picking well.
Yeah.
I know people will be listening going, how do I do that? I've been on the dating apps for so long. It never goes my way. What are these people doing wrong?
Yeah, I don't think they're doing anything wrong. I think the environment is tough, I have to say. Like I meet work with a lot of women and guys who are struggling on that. So I don't think people are doing anything so wrong, except that I think there's this slight desperation and I really understand that, and I don't say it in any judgmental way. But there is a kind of people are really burnt out on the apps and they're worn out and they're tired trying and they're getting this sort of constant rejection. I wouldn't like it. It's not easy. I think it has always been challenging. Meeting a love, somebody you really love has always been challenging, but I think it's harder now than ever. And this disposable, quick quality of the dating, it's very hard. It's almost like you can't recover, or there isn't even a privacy to recover. It's just kind of, the whole thing is very out there. And I think that's difficult for people. And I think it's making them, in some ways, kind of, they want a checklist. They want to be sure that, before they invest anything, that it's worthwhile. That's kind of hard too. So it makes you maybe a little bit rigid about it. Also, you're getting the list before you get the chemistry.
Yeah.
Like we sit down here and you kind of know there's something about being right here that we know if we like each other or we don't. And it just comes through. So, that comes through obviously, in the real environment of dating as well. So that's what's hard. So the one thing I would say is move to meeting quick, fast, waste no time on the talky talk.
Oh, really?
I think so, because people
That's
get
great
invested.
advice. Yeah. And
They start imagining it, Jen, and they start thinking, oh, I hear people saying, and I really, just really building and whatever. What was building? Your imagination was building. You were imagining how this could be, and I understand that. But I would say, you think you like him, you like the look of him, it's too nice, 2 nice texts, fine, see you for a coffee.
Yeah, get in there.
Get in and get out.
I think there's a lot of misinformation out there as well. And even looking back to when I was young, I remember an older person, a peer, told me that when I was dating my now husband, who I'm madly in love with, by the way, and it gets better as the years go on, thank God. But I remember that person saying to me, and it really stuck with me, almost made me think we should break up. Mm-hmm. She said to me, if you don't get butterflies every time that person walks in the room, he's not for you. And I thought, well, I don't. But I really like him, but maybe he's not the one. And then I questioned everything because I thought this might have been a sign. And that's not the case, is it? Okay, you can get butterflies and sometimes it doesn't happen anymore. I'm sorry, Lau, it just doesn't. But it doesn't mean that I'm not madly in love, right?
Of course not. You're right. And I mean, here's the little bits, the little things that people kind of catch on to. Yeah. Misinformation. I mean, butterflies every time. I don't expect that from anybody. I really don't. But I think there has to be some magic. I have to say that in love. I think
probably that's what they meant.
Yeah, but as a couple, I think you have to, and it doesn't just last. You know that. Mm-hmm. Anybody who's been married or anybody who's been in a long relationship knows there's all sorts of things as time goes on. I think that you do have to really work at the magic, and you have to give it time. It has to be set out there, where you're not the mother, you're not the father or whatever, you're the girlfriend, boyfriend, so to speak, and you get back into that space. And I think good couples who last, that's what happens. I think they do it anyway.
Yeah.
Maybe they do it because they want to be together, or they do it because they know it's the right thing. But I find couples who last, they have good habits.
Okay.
And the good habits are time together.
Let's talk about that. The skills that you need to harness a good relationship, because there's so many. And I do find when we talk about long-term relationships, checking in with yourself and checking in with each other is so, so important. But, life gets in the way and we forget to do that simple thing, right?
Yeah. And then you've got the scrolling and,
and the phones.
I'm the worst myself. I'm on the phone and, telling everybody to put down your phone. But it's very hard because there's an awful lot going on in our lives and it's all very fast. That's why I think you have to really say it's a Wednesday and a Saturday. It might not be that it's always Wednesday, Saturday, but it's twice a week, especially if you have children around, that you allocate some time. It might be a walk and a coffee or a walk and a drink or a movie together or something, but you have to say it's twice a week, it's our time. You've got to create it. And if you can't go out for it, you create it within the household, but also it has to be out the door. Because you have to be able, we all know that relationships survive on a little bit of desire, a little bit of sexual, interest all of the time. Mm-hmm. It's very hard to be wildly sexually interested about your partner who's walking around the house in his dressing gown or in his tracksuit.
Or he's kissing the dog before he kisses you when he comes in the house.
Mooching around or, like not getting dressed. So it's when you're out. So I think there's 2 things about being out. First of all, we have to be out and dollied up a little bit for each other. And I think there's that. I think the other is very interesting that the time we desire, our partners more than any other time is actually when we see them away from us doing their own thing. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like it might be you might watch a guy playing football. You might watch him, I don't know, or a girl doing her thing in her business, sort of mode and think, God, she's lovely. So what's happening there? You're actually seeing the person in that kind of a distant way again. Not this familiar around the house kind of way. I mean, that's really important. So you have to have opportunities to kind of get distance from each other. And, and then mind that distance between the two of you. But it's both.
That's really interesting because that habit is probably the hardest for people who are in long-term relationships is
busy lives.
Getting that distance and seeing them for who they are and what you fell in love with and not the...
Exactly.
Slouch in the dressing gown, playing video games.
Yes, talking to nobody in particular.
Exactly. It's a real turn off. It's a real ick.
It is. And same for women.
Oh, listen. Oh, Lau has many icks about
Yeah.
me. I've started crocheting and I wear a crochet light.
Yeah, lovely.
And that's a bit,
Very attractive.
it's not the most attractive thing, but I refuse to give it up.
Yeah.
How much of our past do we bring into our new relationships? Is there a bit of that? Is there a bit of trauma there that we need to work on and maybe discuss with our new
Not
relationship?
everybody is traumatized, let's be honest, but we all bring our childhood, good and bad, with us. I mean, it is what has formed us.
Yeah.
You know, the shape of us, who we are, how we are emotionally, how we love, what we expect from each other, what we think is going to happen. All of that is predicted by how we were treated initially. So why wouldn't we bring it with us? I think when you meet somebody, you're meeting who they are now, who you think they are. You're also meeting who they're going to become, and you're meeting their history. Now, you don't bump into their history on the first few dates, but you'll bump into their history quick enough. Because how people argue,
Yes.
how people love you, of course, and how people argue, how people communicate with you, that's all their history.
Is that when therapy becomes important if you're trying to break certain patterns or really bad habits, you know, in
Well, that's
arguments?
when you can
and stuff
spot
like that?
them.
Yeah. Okay.
You see, you can really spot them. And you're not going to spot that if you're not arguing. But you'll often hear people saying, you know, it's just the first time we disagreed and, oh my God, I saw another side and I was so shocked and I'm not sure I can get over it. Yeah, well, maybe you shouldn't get over it. But also, maybe if it's worthy, then you start working at it. But again, I return to not in the first year. You shouldn't be having bumps that are big enough to need therapy in the first year. I would say the first 3 years.
That is such good advice.
Don't come near me.
Oh, that is such good advice. Let's talk about communication, because communication is key and we hear that all the time. But what does that actually look like and how do we become good at that as, you know, repressed Irish couples?
Yeah, I think communication, I suppose I would think of a few things. I would think of the way you talk to each other.
Okay.
I think it always has to be kind. It always has to be nice. It always has.
Even if you don't want to?
Yeah, I think you have to be. I think the language of love is different. You know, you're not in the office telling people what to do or asking people for things. It's a loving thing.
You're not speaking to your child.
You're not speaking to your child.
Yeah.
You're not speaking to a colleague. So it should be lovey. I think it should be kind. I think it should be soft. I think it should be, they talk a lot about these bids for connection, which I do like actually, but this little might be a touch, just a touch or, or whatever. It's soft. It's always acknowledging that you are different to everybody else. I think that is really important. The other is, of course, communicating around. So there's a physical communication. I suppose that's what I was saying with that, with the touching thing. But the other is, I think that there should never be, when I suppose I have a few no-nos, no personal comments, like no personal criticisms. The way people say, to me, that's out in relationships.
Really?
Yeah. I think you can say, when you do that, that makes me feel this. Mm-hmm. But I think to say, you're a bully or you're a name calling, I think that's just out personally. Well, you can do it, but you're going to damage something. And I think relationships are a bit like that kind of, that Italian glass. It's kind of precious. I think if you break it, if you break this softness that is between people, I don't think you ever get it back.
Okay.
I really don't. So I think that it's really important to watch your words with each other. You might be able to talk to your sisters and brothers that way, but if you want love between you, you have to you have to mind it, and you have to remember that it's tender, and once broken, it doesn't really go back together very well.
And arguments that happen in relationships, inevitably. How do you feel about people who say, "Oh, we never argue"?
Yeah, I'd be worried about that.
You'd be worried about them?
I would, yeah. I think it's natural to... I certainly think many couples have no arguments for about 4 or 5 years. That's quite usual.
Okay.
In good relationships, yeah. But I think to be together 5 years, 10 years and not arguing, I would think, what's going on there? Who's giving in here? And, that would be the questions that I would be asking in my mind. I would be thinking, well, is this because you're so good You never step on each other's toes. You never forget things. You never, annoy each other. I don't really believe that.
That's impossible, really.
It's impossible, yeah. So now, sometimes people will say, some people are more easygoing, they can let things go. They don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And some people take it a little too personally. So, you have to have latitude around all that, I think. But in general, people do argue. And I think you have to learn to argue well, repair well. And I think, for me, I think that, clinically, arguing is about, you have to be not trying to win and lose. If you're winning, you are losing, because you're letting something of this love in the middle, you're letting it diminish. So it's not about winning, it's about, you did that, okay, but why did you do it? Tell me why you did it, explain that to me. So I should want to understand what exactly prompted you to behave that way. So, and you have to be interested in why it's hurting me. And if it has hurt me, and you've done it without meaning to do it, then we should be able to forgive each other. That's how it goes. So if instead you say, you're a this because you did that, and I go, oh yeah, but you're always at this, you're always doing this, and you've done this to me 10 times, and the language of you and I, the thing of you, is has been really shown to be the key determinant, by the way, of divorce. That's a really interesting, I know, little nugget.
Wow.
But it's just come to me now as I tell that piece. But
Yeah.
that couples, they did this huge longitudinal study in the States on people who were married for over and connected, together in long relationships for over 30 years and considered themselves to be happy. And the single thing that they were able to pull out was that the language in talking to each other was always absent of that sort of, the accusatory. And when they rowed, there was none of the you. It was always, I feel that you this, they always started with themselves. I'd love if you'd make this better. I'd love if you'd try harder. I'd love if you would leave that out when you're talking to me in public, So, and
I didn't realise how important language
I think that's a nice piece for people, actually.
It is. It's and really good advice. And that's one thing we can all just really look at ourselves and go, well, how do I speak to my partner?
And contribute. Yes.
Okay.
And if you've been put down as a child, people are very, very bad at, you're hitting on a painful spot for them. If they've been put down as a child, you'll see those people not very good in argument. And that has to be watched. And that's where knowing yourself comes into play. If they can know themselves and know that this is their, their kind of scar spot, like being hit on a sore, well, then they really, they can do better.
Therapy.
Yeah. Well, short therapy, little bit of reconsidering. I'm not a big long, therapy doesn't always have to be long term. People come to me, I work now in literally 4 sessions. I suppose now I used to do longer stuff, but as you're more efficient, people get a lot out of 1 or 2 sessions. And it's not just for me. I'm not looking for loads and loads of work. I just would say to people, therapy doesn't need to be long. You can get the listening of a therapist and it can really fix things in 2 sessions, in my view.
Well, that's good to know.
Yeah.
7-year itch. What are your feelings on that? What is it? Does it exist?
Yeah.
It does.
I think so. Yeah. I think
I've had a 3-year itch, a 5-year itch, a 7-year.
How many years are you married?
We're together over 20.
Okay, over 20 years, yeah.
So we're together a long time, but we're married.
Coming up to the 3rd itch.
Yes.
21. Yeah. What would I say about the 7-year itch? First of all, we know it was a film and all that kind of, sort of, how would you say, immortalised a little bit that way. But I think it is really natural because we are drawn to people who in some way fill up some void in us, or we perceive that they will. And that is part of the draw and that is part of the chemistry. But after 7 years, you've probably fulfilled that. And that itch is over, if you want to put it that way. So you've fulfilled that. Maybe now you are a mother or a father and you have children. All that desire that was sort of underneath the chemistry in some way has been met. So now where are you? What are you really drawn to now in this person, apart from the fact that you have family and children, all of that? But just from the itch point of view and the unsettledness, if you like, that people feel at different points, I think it's about rethinking, sort of re-looking at each other, almost recontracting inside yourself.
Yeah.
What am I what am I here for now? Why do I love him now? Why do I love her now? And I think people actually do that. It's kind of like a turn of a wheel. There's a kind of a turning. People know, this is different now. We're in this now for, a bigger reason, in fact. It's not a smaller reason, it's a slightly different reason, but it's a bigger reason. And I think good relationships grow like that in tranches. You have the children, then you have this fantastically busy time with children. And really, you don't have time really to have many doubts. You'll notice that with couples. They don't have many doubts in that phase, but they do begin to have doubts when the children become less stressful on them, if you like. And then they begin to think, I'm exhausted here. I've done everything. I'm going like a train. And, what about me?
Yeah.
And you will see this after 20 years. I hate to say that, mention that word. But a lot of, as you know, separations and divorces happen in the 20-year period, at the 20-year mark. Mm-hmm. And I think it's to do with this. It's this reconfiguring of the relationship. And sometimes there's a failed reconfiguration then at the 21 sort of year point. And that can also coincide with menopause, which makes us all finding life very difficult.
Yes, well, that was my next question, but you've kind of touched on it there. Why do so many couples have that lull in midlife? I mean, menopause is definitely a factor.
100%, in my view.
So glad you said that. It makes so much sense.
Yeah, it's a very hard time for women.
It's a very hard time for women, but it's also a very hard time for their partners.
Yes.
Because they don't understand what's going on.
And we don't either, really.
No, nobody knows how to navigate this new space, and that can be quite difficult on a couple.
I mean, very difficult emotionally, physically. We find it difficult. Mm-hmm. The heat, all of these things. We've had so much on menopause, and I'm not an expert, but as they say, I'm an expert on my own menopause. And I think that it's challenging. I would often find clinically that I would always be checking that with people, who come with that kind of timing. And I would always say, is menopause a factor just for yourself individually? Because if you don't acknowledge it, well, now we can't deal with it. I mean, I would definitely acknowledge that moodiness, anxiety can rise, all of these things. We've got the heat factor, we've got the sexual indifference factor, libido's sliding away somewhere, and
or ramping up.
Or ramping up if you manage it well.
Yeah.
And so, but really, good couples really have to come together on this. It is a team effort, I think, at that point. And good couples do get through it and do even better. But it's hard, and it takes maturity, and I think it's hard for the men too. It's hard for the partners. And I think they have to be, they have to really be sort of encouraged to really be part of it together. You have to really kind of get into that conversation together and get to know and understand what really helps and works.
Absolutely.
Both of you.
And going back to the itch, the 7-year itch, the 5, I was saying the 5 year, the 3 year, it's actually quite a positive thing, because there has to be a time, if you want to be in a long-term relationship, that you sit down and go, what do I want now? How do I want it? Because you change. I'm not the same person, and we're not the same people as we were when we were in our 20s or 30s. We're completely different, and so much changes.
Yes.
So there's no harm in every couple of years sitting down and have a recontract situation going on, right?
And I think we do it in some ways instinctively, but actually sitting down, as you say, and doing it in an absolute overt kind of way, I think is a good thing. I mean, I often say to couples for interest who are in any kind of difficulty, I would often get them to, as a practice, and I must say I've done this myself, which was kind of where I found it, kind of fell upon it myself. I thought it was very, very good. And it's just where if you were in the workplace, you would sit down with any project and say, how are we doing?
Yeah.
We're spending an awful lot of time on that. Is that working out? Or is that reaping any reward for us? So it's a kind of a sit down, a bit like a life audit. It's just like a relationship audit. And I know that sounds sometimes a little bit, what would you say? A little bit too clinical.
Yeah.
But actually, it's about getting really good feedback. It's not about picking problems and saying, well, we've about 10 things now that are going wrong. Instead, we say, look, this is good. This is good. I love this part of us. I love this part going well, and you kind of validate all these things. And then you say, but there's a few things we should work on. What will we work on? What will I work on for you? And what will we work on together? And it really does help, because you're getting all that validation as well Do you know? So
Yeah.
it's 5 good things followed by 2 things that you need to work on. So that's the kind of format I give people to work on that, on a kind of like a relationship review. Once every 3 months.
3
No harm.
months.
Yeah.
Okay.
Once every
Nice.
3 months,
Yeah,
once
yeah.
every 6 months, you can choose. But I wouldn't leave it once every 5 years.
No.
Do you
Then
know?
you're in trouble.
Well, you're leaving things to the end. Things will fester, We all
Yeah.
know. They fester if we don't sort them.
Yeah. When is it time to throw in the towel? Like, when is it time to walk away? You love someone, but it's not. How do you know?
How do people know? Interestingly, I was just responding to something today about somebody who said they're finished in their relationship, and they are finished in their relationship. They feel it's dead, and they're in some counselling, some couple counselling. And is it of any use? In fact, that they felt, I thought this was interesting, they felt it was making them worse because it was making them feel, this person feel, like they could see more clearly why they don't like this person. And I thought, you're done.
You're done. That's when you know.
I think you're done. When the more you know and the more you listen, the less you like them.
Okay.
I think that's not a good sign. By the same token, again, not advertising therapy, but I would still say that a little bit of therapy at the end, if people are closing off, a relationship, I think it can take some of the bitterness out. It can take some of the anger out, and it can make you can give you some kind of ending and closure. And I think it's fair for your partner. If you're the one who's leaving and you're done, maybe give them a chance to catch up. After 20 years, I certainly know I would.
That's down to respect as well.
I think so. If you loved them once, and I think if you love people, there's a part of you that always loves them a little, unless they've been obviously rotten to you.
Yeah.
And or let you down, or they've been obviously abusing you. That goes without saying.
Uh-huh.
But I think if you love somebody, I think there's always some love for them.
Yeah. I always thought if me and Lau ever got divorced, we'd be great friends.
Yeah.
Isn't that a lovely thing to say?
It is a lovely thing to say, yes. But it's true, and it's a nice thing. You feel that I have enough respect for you, I have enough liking for you,
Sure.
that you don't want to see that person in the ditch. You want to see that person, even if we're not together. You still want them to see them live a good life. Maybe not within 3 weeks.
Yeah, maybe not. Definitely not.
A little bit of time.
And going back to the home, and how important is it, going back to language and habits and all that kind of stuff for your children, if you have them, to see that, because they mimic that, don't they? They model
Absolutely.
themselves on you, and that will just be history repeating itself, hopefully in a
Exactly.
positive way.
Well, this is how you break cycles, isn't it? You love your children in a way you give them. Often people give their children what they think they didn't get, in the same way as we do with partners. I think we give people the love that we really hope we would get, and often they don't even need it. And it's a little bit like that with children. I think you're showing them how to love, but you're also, by the love you give them, what you're also doing is you're showing them what to expect. So you're raising their standard, aren't you? And this is why, because we move to the familiar when we're attracted to people. And people will often say, why am I always going for the wrong guy? Why am I always going for this?
Yes.
It's because we have a habit. We're kind of creatures of habit. We're inclined to move to the familiar. So if you're used to a situation where people are kind of a little bit tough with you, or I don't mean rough sounds too much, but maybe emotionally tough with you, then you can find yourself sort of moving towards people who are like that. So if you teach your children, really, and model it, as you say, where they're seeing loving touch, they're seeing loving connections, they're seeing, mum and dad not roaring at each other, but being annoyed with each other and sorting it out and kissing and making up and being decent to each other. I think that really matters. It really matters.
And for listeners who want a strong relationship long term, what should they focus on the most?
What should they focus on the most? Well, I think you have to focus on the emotional. I think you have to focus on the sexual. I think you have to be, I think it's important not to let it slide away. And I think people sometimes can do that. And, menopause can cause a kind of a little bit of a break for people. And it can be hard to get all of that back. But I know there was a lot of talk there about scheduled sex. I don't know if you saw that. And I know we're here talking more about relationships than sex. But I just think you can't underestimate it, because if you don't have a sexual relationship, you don't have that softness between each other and that forgiving, that more easily forgiving sort of, that's just that emotional kind of softness, I think that can be lost. And so you have to really be careful of that. The other thing I think is building up your own self, building up your own sort of, have many roles. Don't be just a partner to anybody, Now, I know that I don't mean that patronisingly in any way.
No.
But the more roles you have in life,
the
more resilient you are about the breakups of any situation, be it children, jobs, your identity needs to be wrapped around many things, not around one thing. That would be something I would be very conscious of. And it leaves you more resilient in life. So I think I would be careful always to build your own life, build your own things, live your own life, but also make sure there's time together.
Yeah, like two trees, but their branches are
touching,
entwined. Yeah.
Yes, we have a thing in therapy, and I'd be very conscious of it. Sort of healthily independent, touching almost like train tracks, crossing over and touching and back, and I think. I think that's really important, yeah. Otherwise, I think you become a kind of a very dependent structure. Yes, there was something else floating in my mind there that I wanted to say, and it is that you're also bringing in the outside. If you don't have anything outside the house, or outside your job, and you're coming in and you're relying on each other for too much. You're looking for what? You're looking for fun, jokes, stories, emotional kind of validation, therapy. It's too much.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
I don't want to be anybody's everything.
Yeah.
And I think if you're asking somebody to be your everything, it ain't going to work. You are responsible for your own happiness. You're responsible for yourself. Get up, go and do it. And then bring loads to the relationship. That's what you bring to the relationship. That's my view.
How do you know you're with the right person? Is it fundamentally just sitting down and asking yourself how they make you feel when you're around them?
Yes. I think that's, I would always say that. How do they make you feel? I think, how do you know they're the right person?
One, let's say the one.
I think, oh yeah, that's a really good question. I think, how do you know it's the one? I think you feel more yourself with that person and more free to be yourself than with anybody else. I think that is really a marking kind of, I would say you're really in the hot zone if you're feeling that. Other than that, I think the chemistry goes with that. But I think being yourself and feeling that, and where this person wants you to have everything for yourself. Where they're not trying to make you feel small or be small, where they're saying, you can do that, go do that. They want you to grow, they want you to be as big as you can be. Hang on to that person.
That's a blue flag? Okay, I'm not up on my flags.
Yeah, I'm not good on flags either.
Yeah, I just know the red flag is bad.
Flag.
That's a green flag.
Big, very oversized green flag.
Amazing. Just some amazing advice in there. Thank you so much, Stephanie. I'm Jennifer Zamparelli, and thanks for listening to Just Between Us.